Having the right TMS is vital in supporting freight broker growth. Partner with TIE software to optimize your processes and compete with confidence. Get into the automation, data insights, and cash flow optimization game. Request a demo at tiesoftware.com. Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we're covering a variety of freight market opinions with one of our favorite returning guests. Don't forget to subscribe to Check Call, the newsletter on FreightWaves.com if you haven't already. Today we are joined by the one and only Manny McElroy, the Senior Vice President of Transportation at ITS Logistics. Welcome back to the show, Manny.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Always love being on your show.
I'm excited for this because we're kind of getting into some of my favorite things, which is kind of your hot freight opinions, your hot takes on what's going to happen and what could happen, or maybe some less hot takes and just some ones, definitely backed by data or, fun stuff like that. So let's jump on in. Manny, what is your outlook for 2024? You got any hot freight opinions you're waiting to see on what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think along with everybody else, everyone's looking at market dynamics, the economics that's going on currently, and what everyone's hoping for is a turnaround, I guess you could say, in the transportation world. And a lot of people are talking about Q2 and in quarter two of next year that you might see an intake of increased tonnage coming in and possibility for a turn. I don't really see it going that way. I think that next year is going to mimic a lot of what it looks like this year, not necessarily a downturn, but I think it's going to be pretty flat based on the amount of imports that are coming in, people switching to near shore. And I think that it's going to stay pretty flat for 2024. And I think everyone needs to buckle in and enjoy the ride and know that it will end up coming back. So stay positive and, everyone just needs to keep buying as much as they can. That will help us out.
If consumers could just double down on spending and get all of that. As a consumer, I'm doing my part, to single-handedly stimulate the economy in one day. But we just do what we can.
Yeah, you and my wife both. You guys are driving the economy forward, so thank you.
Well, you're welcome. We can also thank the Barbie movie because, you got to have your outfit to go with it. But yeah, no, it's a good time. So one of the things that we're kind of seeing is some tightening capacity in certain markets. It's something that we haven't really seen for most of the year because honestly, it's been, if freight's there, a driver or a carrier is going to take it. What are some of these things that you're seeing kind of driving that tight capacity and, maybe making it where shippers just aren't going to have almost complete routing guide compliance?
I think that everyone's been talking about the marketing tightening based on carriers exiting the market, and that's due to, the operating margin for the carriers is flat out. They're operating in the negative with fuel prices increasing, insurance costs, the rates continue to fall in the spot market. And that's where you're starting to see the slow trickle of carriers exiting the market, which, increases the tightening. It's not at the drastic event that everyone thought it would be, the cliff event yet. But if markets continue to drop from a rate perspective, I think you'll see that happen at a much faster pace.
I think that's something that I'm curious as to how much of that is that. And then there's also something I saw the other day that's like there's a crazy high number of increased out of services by the FMCSA, like apparently new entrants that may have come on in the last 18 months. So a lot of it would be around the boom of the pandemic's rates. But you have to have like a security audit. And so apparently if you either don't, or not a safety audit. And if you pass it, or if you refuse to do it, or you don't pass it, you get placed out of, your whole company gets placed out of service. And there's been an increase of that. So I'm wondering kind of how much of that is also related to the lower freight rates and maybe people can't update their equipment to, bring them up to those safety standards.
No, that's a very good point. We have the conversation with our customers, and I think that it's extremely important to understand that from a shipper standpoint, I understand everyone wants the best rates possible. But when you go and push rates down to a certain level, what you end up doing is you start driving the market down to where people start cutting corners, which obviously as an ITS, we don't condone that whatsoever. And we try to do everything possible, the partner providers we do work with, that's not happening. But when you are squeezed to a certain spot of where you're going in the negative, you cut corners. And exactly what you said, you don't do the necessary maintenance on your tires, your tractors, your trailers. And then when the FMCSA comes around and you get the DOT checkpoints, you end up going out. And that's That's an issue that's happening right now.
I guess when it comes to that, how do you, because you guys have to have those conversations with your shippers of, yes, you do want low rates, but you also want this level of service that you have. And so I guess how do you kind of balance that conversation of, cost versus service, and then also take the time to educate your shippers of, yeah, this is how you could push it down to this way, but also we don't recommend it because then you're going to get carriers who can run and will run at this rate, and your freight might get delayed, there might be damages. How do you kind of balance that, what the shipper wants versus also educating them to make sure they're not setting themselves up for failure?
Absolutely. I think that's the key thing is we always go back to this. It's the relationship, right? Your customer's paying you to be the supply chain expert for their business in the group of business that you handle for them. And that comes with educating on what's taking place. Now, you don't need to get in all the way into detail of what actually happened at the ground level, but understanding that if you want service, you need to be able to have the right providers, the right drivers on the business. And that goes to where, as a transportation company like ITS, you have to have the relationships on the back end to uphold that service. And you have to constantly nurture those relationships. If you're turning and burning carriers left and right, just trying to find the bottom of the barrel pricing, you're going to get bottom of the barrel service, which your customers are going to come back and you're going to have dirt cheap rates and poor service, and then you're going to end up losing the business. So helping the customers understand that it's a ripple effect, and you need to be that person that's holding the line in certain aspects with customers and with your carriers. If you're speaking to them about that, this needs to be a common ground and understand that we have one common goal. That's to take care of the shipper, take care of the customer, but also for everyone to make money and stay afloat, right?
Yeah, no one really wants to go in. No one wants to start their day and say, like, let's go lose money today. Like, no one wakes up and is like, ooh, it's Wednesday. It's a good day to just go lose money. Like, nobody wants to do that. So I think if, everybody does, I mean, like you said, we always come back to it, those relationships. If you come back and you say, hey, this is what I need, this is what you need, there has to be common ground here. There has to be a place where we can meet in the middle because, those relationships are key. It's what ultimately can get you out of a bind or keep your freight safe while it's out on the road.
Yeah, I think that's something as I think, our company, we look at it, but as you move forward in this industry is, are you looked at as a strategic partner with your customer, or are you looked at as a number that provides a rate on an RFP? And I think that we're heavily focused on being the strategic partner and helping enhance a supply chain because that's what our job is.
Exactly. You're not there. Your customer didn't hire you to run it to the ground. They wanted you to run it and keep it going and make it successful. Speaking of running and growing and successful, everything like that. Everyone's been saying that peak season is going to be weak season this year. So is that something that you guys are seeing? Do you still is there anything that, shippers, that this is their traditional peak season? Is there something that they need to be mindful of heading into it, where while it might seem like it's going to be more of a mild peak season, but they also need to stay aware?
Yeah, twofold. I think that everyone's peak season, I mean, if you go back 5 years, every single transportation company was so geared up for October, November, December. And then it moved to like, oh, well, now everyone's geared up for Black Friday through Christmas Eve. But even more so, it's people are starting to plan their peaks way further in advance. And you're not seeing the massive hockey stick angle of peak anymore. And I think that's going to be a continued thing where people are just professionalizing their supply chain. One thing I would say from a carrier perspective, don't use this peak season if there is an increase in cost to start gouging your customers, because it's going to come right back and they're going to be looking at you like, yeah, when you took your time and you wanted to now stick it to us on a rate, they're going to remember that next year. And for customers, I think that they have to understand that there might be some increases here and there, and they need to understand that's to get the job done and be able to service the business, and understand that they go into the holiday season and there's gonna be a lot of stresses and there might be weather. Everyone just needs to be on the same page and understand that we're all in this together. It's not been great for a lot of people. And peak season usually does some opportunity for people to enter into new markets and grow. That might not be the case this year.
I think that that's something that something you said is really important, is that, you don't want this to be the season that you take advantage of people, because like you said, people are going to remember it, and it is the unofficial bid season. So you don't want to have, or at least if not now, it usually comes up in January or February. And I feel like that, trying to turn it, and this is the time that you're going to make money off of this one customer. I think that's the fastest way to get yourself kicked out, because a lot of carriers are looking to, make their routing guides smaller, have less carrier involvement, instead of having maybe 50 carriers are bringing it down closer. I think that that's something that is really mindful to keep in mind of is, you gotta, it's truly a partnership.
No, definitely. I think that the more we can speak to it and get better alignment between shippers and carriers to understand that if you've been in the industry longer than 4 years, you know that it goes up and down, and it's about the long term focus and strategy versus how much money you can make today.
Also, one of the things you said really kind of got me, and that is, have shippers actually gotten it together and started planning their supply chains appropriately? Like, have shippers gotten it together?
What am I supposed to say no and then have shippers look at me like, oh, they don't know what I'm talking? No, I think that there has been a lot of focus on supply chain, and that goes from the full supply chain, from the drayage, the imports, who they're using as a freight forwarder, who they're using as a steamship line, importing cross dock across the whole entire thing. People have gotten smarter, and how can they be more cost effective? I think that shippers got um, it handed to them in 2021 and 2022, and they are looking at it as, how can I not have that happen? And that comes with having the right partnership. So whether the shippers specifically got it together or they just joined with great transportation companies, one way or the other, the goals being achieved, I feel.
I mean, as a consumer, I love it. I love seeing products available and ready and at the store when I want them, and not on back order for 6 months. But as someone who loves reading headlines of, this shipper supply chain has, like, it's taking a year for a piece of furniture to get someone. I'm happy that shippers have gotten it together, because no one wants to read those headlines. It's not fun. You feel bad. And as like someone who, you could go in and fix it, you're like, just give me like a week in there. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it so that this isn't a problem anymore. But I also think that, like you said, nobody wants to see that bottom line waver when it comes to, oh, we just didn't have product there at the right time. Like, that's not an excuse anymore. You can't say that we have supply chain constraints. It's been a couple years. It's time to figure it out. And I think supply chain has gotten a little bit too much publicity, not necessarily too much, but a lot more than usual for shippers. So I think it's something they've actually had to pay attention to and really kind of devote a lot of resources to. So I'm here for shippers getting it together and, having a strong peak season, wherever their peak season may be. I know different shippers have different timings, but I'm here for it. Here you go, shippers. Way down. Well done. Well done.
I think it's interesting if you're from the transportation world and you order something and the shippers are still saying, with transportation shipping, we can't get a truck to come pick it up. I'm like, no, you're living in the past. That's not a thing. Like, I'll send a truck in right now to come pick it up. So some people still haven't caught on, but it's always fun having those conversations.
I do love that when you get the thing of like, you get the notification where like, oh, sorry, it's delayed. We're having issues. And I'm like, what are your issues? Like, who is your carrier? Because I could call customer service for that carrier today and be like, hi, why haven't you picked this up yet? And they're like, well, no. And you're just like, you got to get it. You got to get it together. Come on. It's 2023. Get it together.
Right.
One of the areas, though, I feel like we haven't necessarily heard a lot from. They started off the year with a bang, and that's rail. That we've started off with a bang. They, in more ways than one, and so it seemed like rail was all over the news. And then the summer came, and it's been dead silent over there. So, are we still seeing chassis shortages? Are there still, backups at ports? Like, what's going on in the rail side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that multiple things. There's not the chassis. I don't think there's any issues getting chassis right now. I think that we're seeing the most decrease in cost for chassis that we've seen in the past 4 or 5 years. There's the congestion at ports really isn't a thing that's actually causing a bunch of issues. You saw at the beginning of the year, I think, where rail was an important factor, was that the trucking costs did not catch up to rail until about middle of this year. So people were going towards rail because they're still in the shock of how much their transportation costs were. They wanted to minimize that heading into the year. But now, the trucking costs, over the road costs is pretty close to what the rail costs are. But you do still see some customers going rail because they look at it as free storage. I get a couple extra days on the rail and I don't have to have it in my storage or my cross dock. So they're actually utilizing that because of the fact that it actually saves them money putting it on the rail. So you're seeing it all kind of come together. And we've actually seen a lot of customers put stuff on rail instead of doing drayage, cross-dock, truckload. They'll just run it rail all the way across. So, like I said, sophistication in the supply chain is happening.
That is something I didn't even think about, is using, I don't want to say like using rail as your storage, but buying yourself extra time, because obviously if you have a truck, it goes a little bit faster than the railroads do. But that is actually kind of a genius thing, because you don't need it at this moment. You just need it, buy yourself a couple more days, but you do need it eventually. And I could save myself my storage costs just by having it shipped via the rail, because it's already on the rail. And so it truly is a win-win. And okay, that's actually pretty smart. That's really smart.
Yeah, I didn't come up with it. One of my guys told me it, but no. I just we talk about it often because I'm like, man, why is this stuff going rail? And then, like you said, you think about it. Why would you want this stuff to come and hit your dock, and then you have to get it pushed out and everything? So it makes a lot of sense. I don't know how many people are actually doing it on a daily basis, but I think that's where a lot of people are more intrigued by the rail.
I mean, it's because normally when you tell a shipper like, "Oh, your stuff's on the rail," they get kind of mad, especially if they didn't know, because it's going to take a long time and it's a kind of a headache. But I mean, I've never thought of using it as a tool to kind of, instead of getting things from point A to point B at a pretty low need. Like you're not needing it, but you do need it eventually. Um, I That's genius. Well, look at you guys over there having all the answers for everything.
Yeah. And it's less touch points, less people handling the freight from cross docking and transloading and putting it on a different driver for over the road. It's pretty seamless. So makes sense.
All right. So moving away from rail, what about okay, so diesel and fuel has been, I feel like, the talk of the summer. It's gone up, it's gone down, it's hit the highest heights that we've seen, and it's dropped to some thing that could be lower. But what are some things that, maybe you guys educate your freight brokers, your carrier sales reps on when it comes to, negotiating rates and how fuel impacts it?
I think that you got to look at, if you have a contracted scheduled business where that, you get your fuel matrix gets updated every Tuesday when the national average comes out. Something that we look at is you kind of remove that from the actual purchasing. You have your dedicated providers or your contracted providers on the business. You put them on a fuel matrix as well, to where if it goes up or down, they know what they're getting. And then the negotiation piece is very open. It's, hey, I'm gonna set. We agree to a line haul, and now the actual contract is now fluctuating based on what the national average comes out. We do have other situations where you just have to have that conversation. If people don't want to be on the fuel, we have those conversations at the moment. But I think as a 3PL, to protect yourself, you would put the providers on an actual fuel matrix, so that way it removes the ambiguity from those negotiations.
So I came from the LTL pricing world. Everyone's on a fuel schedule there. Like, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And I assumed for the longest time that, if you had contracted truckload pricing, that it was the same way. And then I learned that that's not actually the case. And a lot of times it's just kind of a free for all, YOLO, etc. But one of the things that we had a problem with in some of the LTL world was getting shippers to understand the point of a fuel schedule and getting them on board with one. So kind of, what's your pro tip when it comes to having those conversations with shippers for, introducing fuel matrices, or maybe selling the advantages of a fuel schedule? Because ultimately you do need their sign off on it as well.
No, definitely. I think that most customers are going the route of having a fuel matrix. And I think because of, if, you're going to sign a dedicated, flat rate, but if fuel goes up, 60 cents or whatever, you're going to go back to your customer and say, hey, this is out of my control. I have no authority to change this, but here's what's going on. So if customers have a fuel matrix, you're not having to go back and update rates every, month and a half, 3 months. It's pretty stagnant. It's like, here's my line haul rate. You can set the watch to it. And then over here is a continuing moving accessorial. So having that upfront conversation, if your customer does not have a fuel matrix, is very smart to produce one for them. Everyone can go on and look at the national average and produce their own fuel matrix. So I think that's a smart way to go about it with your customers, and then removes any type of consistently going back and having to change rates and have those conversations.
I feel like it also kind of provides that, like, I don't want to say security or that stability, but like they know from a cost perspective that it's going to be within this range. Because usually the fuel doesn't jump significantly. So if one week it's going to be here, next week it could be one up or one down. It's not usually going to deviate more than that. I mean, sometimes that does happen. Well, it's 2023 has been a wild year for fuel, but typically I feel like that gives them more of like a reassurance of, okay, well, I know it's within this range. So for the most part, all of my loads this week and probably within this month are gonna be around this spot. So I feel like that kind of helps ultimately manage those transportation costs a lot easier.
Absolutely. You can forecast better as a customer, know your transportation costs are, that they're not going to fluctuate to a certain extent. And that's kind of what has driven a lot of the conversations of the past is not knowing what's going to happen. All of a sudden you get hit with something from a transportation charge. So this gives a little bit more visibility and continuity.
Absolutely. I think that's something that a lot of, shippers are going to want, especially as, consumers want more visibility into that supply chain and, they want to know kind of the carbon effects of it. So I'm kind of looking forward to 2024. I'm not going to lie, from a visibility standpoint and kind of, really getting down in the dirt of the transportation world and, kind of really understanding all the aspects of a supply chain for a shipper. I think 2024 might be the year that shippers kind of get in the weeds and really kind of take back a little bit of control of their supply chains.
Yeah. I think that it's who you partner with and what you want in a partnership. And I think the visibility and the honesty is going to take a massive toll going into 2024.
It's time. We don't need any more of the feel like my broker, my 3PL, or my partner is trying to pull the wool over my eyes. It's time for everyone to get on the same page. And I will forever die on the mountain of, if there's a problem, just tell your shipper about it. Don't hide it from them. They're going to find out eventually. Just stop trying to hide things from them.
I say it all the time to my team, and I talk about it. I'm like, there's nothing worse than your customer coming to you with the problem. It should be you going to them first, and that's what we strive on. It's like any other relationship. It's like hit it head on, have the conversation, and if you trust each other, know that you have each other's best interests at hands, then it's an easy conversation.
Exactly. It's just kind of a, hey, this happened. This is the plan that we're going with to solve it. End of story. It doesn't have to be a whole big thing. It's just a nice conversation to have. So we are running out of time, and we already know where you stand on cereal as a soup. So this time, Manny, I'm going to need your best dad joke.
Well, I don't have like a typical best dad joke. I have them with myself, my wife, and my kids. And it started just, coming home. Like I come home from work, I say I had my wife and kids and everything. They're like, all right, I'm going to go change. Like, I'm going to go change my clothes. Right? I said, I'm going to go change. And I started saying, even though I know you guys like me for who I am. And so now when I come home, I say, hey, I'm going to go change. They're like, no, we like you for who you are. And I just think it's funny because it's just like a little running joke every single time I come home.
That is adorable and cute. And honestly, it is the epitome of a dad joke. It's kind of like the, I'm hungry. Oh, hi, I'm dad. Like, I'm going to go change. We like you just the way you are. And then it's a whole bunch of giggles and laughs. And I like that. And hey, Manny, we like you just the way you are here, too. You don't need
Thank you.
So if anyone wants to reach out to you to, maybe see what's going on in the transportation world, or if they have any questions, where can they find you outside the show?
Definitely on LinkedIn. I'm on there quite a bit and connecting with people, and I like sharing industry topics and having conversations. I think anytime we have an opportunity to learn from other people is a plus. So definitely on LinkedIn. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. You guys heard it here first. Manny's DMs are open, so slide on in. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Find Check Call the Podcast anywhere else you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves podcasts like Loaded and Rolling and The Stock Out. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.